One of the greatest secrets from the greatest communicators of all time, from Jesus to Ronald Reagan to Winston Churchill to Margaret Thatcher, all of those folks, when they communicated, they had an amazing ability to tell stories. They illustrated beautifully, and a story will stick with you. Kids love stories, and the little kid and all adults love stories. And what I'd like to do when I frame the whole idea of language creating style is to focus in on the biggest part of that pie, and that would be the ability to tell stories that are riveting, compelling, and here it is, make the point. And they're not just an entertainment venue or a performance venue. They actually pull people in, and you're like a divine surgeon. You soften the skin through ethos and pathos, through storytelling ability, through great organizational ability, then you slide the knife in of truth, logos, and they end up loving it. How do you tell good stories? 4 parts to a great story. Now, I'm not talking about short quotes and short illustrations that are oftentimes graphic and oftentimes terrific. I'm talking about the haymaker, the one that opens a message, for example, if you're giving a public presentation, or a closer, the knockout punch. I'm talking about a story that is remembered like a feast. We eat a lot of food. There are certain feasts we remember. It's the one that is remembered months and even years later on. 4 parts. Number 1, as a speaker or as a communicator, you establish common ground with your listener. They begin to say, my kind of guy, my kind of person. How do you do that? How do you throw a lariat out and pull them in to say, I'm on equal ground with you? This is adult to adult communication. The way you do that is through things that are common to humanity. Things like money, work, relationships, children, emotions. All of those are common to people, common to mankind. And therefore, you have a story that touches the deepest part of those areas. Establishing common ground makes you one of us. Secondly, this illustration then moves to curiosity or suspense. You're like a mountain climber going up a huge mountain. Everybody's enjoying the vista, but you're the one that knows the direction to the top, and you are pulling them along, and they're enjoying the view. You know where you're going. They're not quite sure. That's good. There's a tension there between, and when people look up, and they are listening and they're engaged, you know you're climbing the mountain very well. So you're creating curiosity or suspense as you go. Third, there is a surprise or there is a twist. There's the unexpected. There's a dramatic turn. In a joke, this is called, the punchline. In a great illustration, this is when the unexpected happens and you go, whoa. It's the aha, it's the gasp, it's the that an audience gives when they're not expecting that point to be made. And finally, after you have softened the skin, now you drive the knife in, and that is the moment of truth or the moment of principle, you make the point. It's not just for entertainment value. Oh, you really turn a phrase, you're a great storyteller. No, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about going back to the content, going back to the truth as you see it, and driving that point home. Let me illustrate this through the use of what I would call the human brain. There are 2 kinds of communicators today. One is called a first brain communicator, and one is a second brain communicator. What does that mean? Our first brain, or the limbic system, was developed first in life as a child. Secondly, the outer cortex was developed secondly. The center part of our brain that connects as a child understands only one thing, emotions. The outer part understands only one thing, reasoning. The great communicators of all times have been the ones, a la storytelling, that are first brain communicators. They touch the emotion of us to allow us to then reason. We buy the person, then we buy what they're selling, if you will. To say it another way, to use a bromide that's a cliche, people buy on emotion and they justify with fact. That is absolutely true. What constitutes a first brain communicator? How do you become a first brain communicator? Following 3 principles. Number 1, first brain communicators know that the words learned earliest in life have the strongest force and power. The words that we learn as a child have the strongest force and power. So you use short words in short sentences. Don't try to be a pseudo-intellectual here. Put your cookies on the lower shelf. That way the sheep can come to feed, and the giraffes, those intellectual types, can always bend their necks. As Abraham Lincoln said one time, God must have loved average people. He made enough of them. And isn't that the truth? You are communicating adult to adult with people. You've gone through the message. They've never heard the message. So put your cookies on the lower shelf. Use short words, short sentences. Secondly, words that have color, painting a picture on the canvas of the mind, will make you a first brain communicator. Take the most famous of all Psalms in the Bible, best-selling book of all times, 150 Psalms. You know what the most famous one is? Psalm 23. Ask 9 out of 10 people that can recall the Psalms at all, and they will name, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures." If you go through the metaphors in that psalm, you see amazing pictures, the still water, the green, the table banquet. All of that creates a color and emotion within the heart. Not only that, but in the King James Version, out of 106 words, 91 have 1 syllable. Keep it short, keep it sweet, keep it simple. And finally, first brain communicators have an uncanny ability to remember names. Words learned earliest in life. You know what the word we learned earliest in life, the one that meant the most to us, created our identity, was our name. The naming of persons is extremely important. And when you remember names and use those names, even in the presentation, you will climb the ladder of corporate success. Names are important because they say you care, and you use those names, and I'll tell you, there's emotionality involved. The greatest storytellers of all time were clear, they were accurate, and most importantly, they were relevant. They connected to people in the heart. Become a great storyteller, and you'll become a great communicator.